Hi everybody, it's Elizabeth Vanderkamp, the listening lady, and welcome to the Salamander Festival. What an exciting time. I know we're not in person, we're doing this virtually, but I have a wonderful salamander story for you. And it was written by a very dear friend of mine, Trey Taylor. I added a few things, embellished a few things, as happens with all good stories. And here it is. I'm so happy to share it with you. So the hero, well, he wouldn't think of himself as a hero, but the main character of our story is a monk, a traveling monk, William Guadalupe. And he is the patron saint of sunflowers, birdsong, and the brokenhearted. And he has two trusty companions, goat and bird. And they were traveling along, giving out sunflowers. Bird was singing songs, and William Guadalupe was taking care of the brokenhearted when they came upon a village at the base of a huge red mountain. And I think I misspoke when I said it was a village. At one time, it looked like it was a thriving village because there were shops, and the architecture had beautiful ornaments, and you could tell that at one time people had loved living there and taken great pride in living there. But now there were just a few people, and all of them, they just had a sadness about them. And William Guadalupe saw them gathered around a fire as it was the end of wintertime, and he went up to them and introduced himself, and he said, "Am I right? Is there a sadness about you? And if so, would you mind telling me what happened?" Well, there was an older woman with long, long white hair and bright, sparkly blue eyes. And she said, "Oh, William, of course we'll tell you. We love telling the stories, even if they're sad." And she told him that for generations, many generations, the people of this village had lived together, and they had mined these beautiful stones out of the Red Mountain. Well, for over 7 generations that had happened. They had made things with the beautiful ore that they had gotten out of the mountain. They made bowls, they could build buildings, they could build tables. They sold some of it and they thrived. But then, as all the people were miners, some of them started to get sick. And it started with a terrible cough, and people thought, oh, it's the air. Maybe our air isn't good. And they tried to clean up the air, but that wasn't it. And then they thought maybe it's the water, that the water wasn't good, and they tried to clean the water, but that didn't help. And then they thought maybe it's the earth itself, or maybe it's our red mountain. And they never quite figured it out. But the people who were young enough and strong enough and ambitious enough left the village and went up the Red Mountain. And that's the last we've seen of them. And us old timers, well, we decided to stay. And you're welcome to stay with us, William. Well, William thanked the lady with the sparkly blue eyes, and he tucked in for the night with goat on his right and bird on his left, and they slept very soundly. Well, the next morning they got up, and William thought, I have to go to the top of the mountain and see the people who were there. And he thanked the villagers for the hospitality, left them with some sunflowers. Goat gave them some milk, and of course Bird sang them a beautiful song as they trudged up the mountain. And trudged is the right word. It was quite a hike up the Red Mountain. It took them all day, and the sun was going down at the west when they arrived. Well, William Guadalupe, he didn't realize this, but he had come to expect very warm welcomes from where he landed. And this did not happen in the village at the top of the mountain. No, he came upon people arguing. Some of the people were pointing to the west and saying, "Isn't that magnificent? Wouldn't you like to live in the west where the sun sets?" And some people were saying, "You only say that because you have never gotten up in time to see the sun rise in the east. That is a beautiful sight too. Well, the west is the best. No, east. Don't you know the early bird catches the worm? Don't you know I don't want to catch a worm?" And William Guadalupe and Bird and Goat tried to introduce themselves to these villagers, but nobody paid them any attention. And really that was all right, because they were so tired from that long, long, long walk up the mountain. So they tucked in for the night, as they always did, with Bird and Goat next to William Guadalupe. Well, that night, as often happens, William Guadalupe had a dream. And he usually remembered his dreams. Of course, some were more vivid than others, and this one was incredibly vivid. He dreamed that a miner, like a coal miner with one of those hats that has light right on top of your head, came to him and had a golden candle in his hand. And the miner said, "Come on, come on." And he beckoned William to go with him down the mountain. So William followed the miner in his dream, and the candle, the golden candle, dripped wax. But it wasn't really wax. It was like gold pieces of light that lit the path. And do you know, this path went right down the middle of the mountain. It didn't go to the east or the west. Truly, it went south. Well, when William woke up, he nudged Bird and Goat and got them up, and he started banging on a pot with his cane, and he woke up all the villagers, and wow, were the people who loved the West mad, because they always slept late. And the people of the East weren't so happy either, because they hadn't had their coffee. They said, "What is it, stranger? Why are you waking us at this hour?" And William Guadalupe said, "I had a dream." "Well, good for you, William. We have lots of dreams too." And they actually didn't say William because they didn't know his name yet. They wouldn't listen to him. And no matter how much he banged on his pot, no matter how much Bird sang, no matter how much William Guadalupe touched people on the shoulder and said, "Please listen," they wouldn't listen. They said, "You go listen." And William Guadalupe thought, that's not such a bad idea. So that night, as he was going to sleep, tucked in with Bird and Goat, he decided to listen. And it was as if a whole world opened up to him. He could hear shooting stars whirl across the sky. He heard the tree frogs begin their song. He heard the cicadas waking up from their long, long sleep. He listened so well, he could even hear a moonflower open her petals and a lunar moth come and drink of her nectar. He could hear Goat snoring so peacefully, and Bird's song, it was part of his snoring. And William Guadalupe could hear his own breathing and his own heart. And he felt like he could almost feel the blood. Well, he could feel it, but hear the blood coming through him. And he realized by mistake these villagers had given him a great gift. He listened. And then he heard another sound. Something was rustling through the leaves. It wasn't something, it was a lot of somethings that were rustling through the leaves, and more and more. And William Guadalupe stood up and looked down, and on the ground were bioluminescent yellow salamanders. They were coming from out of the logs and under the trees and the mushrooms and places they had hid for the winter. It was time for them to go to water and lay their eggs. And they reminded William Guadalupe of the drops of the candle of the miner, and he thought, this is it. That's what my dream meant. We are supposed to follow these salamanders. And without a care for who he woke up, he banged his cane on a pot again and woke up all the villagers. Well, luckily, this time they woke up and they saw the salamanders. And William didn't even have to tell them what they meant. They woke up the little children and gathered them, and they watched the salamanders, careful not to step on a tail or a head or squish anybody. And they all went down the other side of the mountain, straight down the middle, not to the east and not to the west. By the time they got to the mountain, or the bottom of the mountain, The salamanders had gone into the stream to lay their eggs. And the people looked around them, and they saw the tall trees and the beautiful clear stream and the hills in the distance, and they knew they were home. And indeed they laughed, because of course some went to the west to build their houses and some went to the east. But there was a village right in the middle where everyone would gather every year in honor of William Guadalupe and bird and goat, and mostly those salamanders. Everyone comes back together for a great festival. They eat and they dance and they sing and they learn and they play and they celebrate the bounty of the earth and the gift of the salamander who taught them the middle way. Thank you for listening. Here's to the salamanders. Here's to you. Thanks a lot. See you next time.